Welcome to the Upfront Podcast, where you get your weekly dose of upfront discussions with people from all around the world. Today's guest is Emily Katz. She was born in Israel, raised in the UK and Spain, and currently lives in Israel, but is planning on moving back to Spain in a few months. Emily had studied organization behavioral development and now works as an organization and self-healing consultant, a professional problem solver on a mission to try and help heal humanity. She's working on different projects to heal the collective, but currently focuses on helping individuals with their mental health. This is a content warning. Please be aware that this episode contains depictions of a violent and graphic nature, including substance abuse and assault, and may not be suitable for all listeners. Please make sure that there are no children or other people around who could be triggered by any part of this episode. Listener discretion is advised. Hi, Emily. It's great to have you on this week's episode.
Hi, thank you. I'm honored.
Yeah, of course. My pleasure. So you actually shared part of your personal story quite publicly, and that's why I approached you. And I thought it would be inspirational or helpful to our listeners to also hear your story and how you actually worked through it all. So if you wouldn't mind repeating it.
Yes, of course. Okay, so hi, I'm Emily, and my story, I guess, begins. I guess I'm going to start with my rebirth. About 5.5 years ago, I, after about over a decade of mental health issues, I got sober, found myself going into a very intensive self-healing journey. I call it my rebirth, but others refer to it as a spiritual awakening. But basically, I realized that I really wanted to help people. And my best friend at the time told me that, how can I help other people if I can't even help myself? And that was a bit of a wake-up call. I'll backtrack. I was diagnosed with post-trauma and borderline personality disorder and irritable bowel syndrome 12 years ago. I had a few traumas growing up. We'll start when I was very young. When I was a child, that my parents were wonderful people wanting to give us the best in life, and had a business and ran the business and were therefore not around very much. So I was raised by nannies. But the way I interpreted that as a child was that I was unwanted or unseen, unheard, unloved. My parents were emotionally absent, physically absent, but also emotionally absent. So growing up, that had quite an effect on me. And then in my early teens, I was 14, my piano teacher, 60-something-year-old piano teacher, kissed me. And when I told my mom about it, nothing really happened. I kept having piano lessons. And so I understood that as men can do what they want. There's no point telling anyone about it. And I'm unsafe. And I'm not really worth protecting. And so that's what kind of then took me through the rest of my teen years. And I subconsciously decided to own my sexuality in attempt to have some sense of control over the situation. But I didn't know how to say no. I believed my role was to please, people please. And basically I ended up in many compromising situations. I was raped at 15. And then things kind of just went downhill. And I turned to drugs and alcohol in attempt to cope, to escape my reality. But I also didn't know how to do things differently. And I think that there's it's something I also would want to kind of mention here, is that most people think that rape victims would then kind of abstain from sex because, you know, it's so traumatic and so hard, and they just don't go there. But there is also a different path that some people take, like myself, and we kind of overdo it, like we become promiscuous in attempt to kind of prove to ourselves that we're fine. So that's something that I think isn't talked about as much. And yeah, so it was very unhealthy, unstable, dangerous, lots of drinking, lots of drugs. And I ran away from home, and I left home, and I dropped out of high school, and I was, you know, the cliche kind of fuck up. Don't know if it's okay that I swear.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So I was really lost, and I was really struggling, and I didn't feel safe in myself either, because I kept finding myself in compromising situations that I was subconsciously kind of putting myself in, because that was what I knew, that was my norm. I didn't really know how to do anything differently. And then I left home, and I ended up deciding to come to Israel. We were living in Spain at the time. I decided that I can't live at home, but I need structure and discipline. So I decided to join the army. So I came to Israel, joined the army. And in the army, it was good experiences and bad experiences. Got raped again. And then after the army, I managed to somehow get accepted to university and did a degree. And things were going okay during the degree, but then in the last year, I called off a wedding. I was engaged, and I ended up getting groomed by a very disturbed man. And yeah, I totally trusted him, thought he was my friend, and he wasn't. And he actually ended up drugging me and keeping me essentially captive in his house for about 3 months. Now, why I say essentially captive is because I found myself in a situation where I was very much dependent on him because of all the drugs and all the drinking, and it was just such a mess, and I really couldn't function. And he was just feeding me lies about how I got there, and I believed him because he was my friend, and our minds were wired to survive. And so my mind was just trying to keep me safe. And so I chose to trust him. And then whenever I got lucid enough and functional enough to realize what was going on, it was so hard for me to cope with the reality that I just wanted more drugs and to escape again and just not handle the reality. So that's what kind of kept me there. And then I created this alternate reality, really. And this is what essentially is similar to Stockholm syndrome, where I believed I was in a relationship with him and that I loved him. I mean, when I did try and leave a couple of times, he would threaten to kill me. What was actually going on there was very, very bad. He'd force me to sleep with him every day, multiple times a day. It was really bad, like really, really, really bad. And that man broke me. When I finally did manage to leave after 3 months, I was just a total mess, and I was diagnosed with post-trauma, and that's like nightmares and tics and rage outbursts and panic attacks, and I was just so heavily medicated to try and kind of function, and drinking through it all just to kind of self-medicate because the medications really weren't working that well, and nobody really knew anything. I hid it all very, very well. So yes, so then it was, after that, it was just trying to survive, really, trying to cope, trying to function with all of this stuff going on. Ended up putting myself into intensive treatments twice, 2 different kind of treatment programs for post-trauma. Nothing really helped. I mean, even in one of the programs that I was in, the other people there were like telling me that I was helping them more than the actual therapy was helping them. And I think it's because they felt seen with me, because I know what they were talking about. Like I went, I was struggling with the same things that they were. And then I did have a coach when I came out of one of my programs, and she actually helped me quite a lot. And I'd been in therapy since I was 15, and therapy was, I guess it was helpful to be able to talk through things, but I really struggled with the fact that I had to pay someone to listen to me and to feel seen and to feel heard. And it was something that I really struggled with. It felt ingenuine. And I also felt like judged by default, because therapists, there's such a strict boundary there. Then, like, I have to bare my soul, and they're not allowed to tell me anything about themselves. And I can't ask them for advice. It's just I have to share and talk, and that's the only thing that you can go and kind of get out of therapy. And I mean, it has its merit. It helped me. At least I had someone to talk to. But yeah, basically, and there's a reason that I'm sharing all of this as well. I'm leading up to it. But basically, fast forward a marriage and a divorce and a couple of attempts at different careers and different industries, and feeling like I'm really meant for something, but I don't know what, and I'm just really self-sabotaging, and I don't know what I'm meant to do with my life, and I don't know who I am, and all of these things on top of it that many of us struggle with anyway. I had like the PTSD and everything else on top of that. So
did anything happen with the perpetrators? Were you able, I don't know, to see them convicted or anything like that?
I wish. No.
Mm.
First, okay, so there's a lot of perpetrators in my life. I think the first one I lost my virginity to, he actually did go to jail for sleeping with his underage tennis students. He was my tennis coach. But I actually didn't tell anyone, but he was convicted because of the other students that he had slept with. So he was the only one that I think actually had any, had anything done to him. But the rapist at 15, three of them, nothing happened to them. Then the one in the army, I never told anyone, so nothing happened there. And then the 3 months incident, I don't know how to call it. I did go to the police, but it was a mess, because I was so fucked. Like I did not, they called me in to confront him. They called him in, and I had no one guiding me, no one with me. They just kind of put me in a room with him. And this was like a couple of weeks after like escaping him. I was so angry with the police for doing this. And I think that that's also one of the things I'd like to help change, is that the police get educated on trauma, and not to do that to trauma victims. Make them confront their abuser. That's not, it just didn't work. I don't even remember what happened, but it was a total fail, and they dropped the case because I didn't know what to say. I think I started laughing. I was just like manic. It was a mess. I argued with him about a phone or something ridiculous. Anyway, then but then a couple of months later, I got called in by the police, the intelligence department, and they said, tell us everything you know about this guy, because they were trying to catch him. They were sending in someone undercover or something, because he's like with the underworld. He was not a very good person. But I never heard what happened. And the last I heard or saw was that he was married with a kid or something. But yeah, no, nothing ever happened to him.
That's devastating. What would you say needs to change, or what would you say needs to be done from like friends and family to help people who've experienced abuse, assault, to make it less of a additional trauma to actually report what happened?
Get educated about trauma and sexual abuse and sexual assault. Get educated, as in what many of us don't really take advantage of is the fact that we have nearly infinite knowledge at our fingertips, like in our pocket, literally. So many of us don't understand it because we don't know about it, and we fear the unknown. So then when we fear the unknown, we judge it, and we even shame the victims, so like mental health, it's something that people are still quite ashamed about, and it's still taboo because it's so like this unknown, because it's an invisible thing. And I think trauma is something that's relatively unknown as well. Even the doctors, like the average GP has not had an education in trauma, whereas trauma is probably the leading cause of physical disease and physical symptoms. It's ridiculous. So yeah, I would highly recommend that they just get educated about it. Google it, read up on it.
Yeah, I've actually witnessed a few situations myself where somebody obviously told their friends. Sometimes the reaction was quite pushy and they said, oh, you need to go and report it. But sometimes I felt like that made the person who had actually experienced this even more, I don't know, maybe scared or afraid or refusing to actually do it, or like less willing than they would have been if the friend wasn't as pushy. Have you experienced something similar to that?
I think that the people that told me to go and report things when they happened, I'm grateful to them for because even when I was 15, I didn't realize that when I'd been raped that it was rape. I thought I just had sex because I was 15 and I was like, I thought I knew everything and I was like a grown up and I'm owning this, and whatever. And yes, I had sex with these guys. And then I told my friends and they're like, Emily, you were really, really drunk. You're 15. They're like 30 something. You didn't want it. And they did it anyway. That's rape. And I was just like, oh, okay. And they're like, you need to report it. So I didn't even realize. But yeah, I think every situation is different, but there is a kind of generalization. In general, yes, I think we should encourage to report it, but it also is a bit of a catch-22 because then, as you see, nothing really happens in many cases.
Right.
So people don't want to report it because it's like, what's the point? And then again, that is what I felt when I was, even I told my parents and nothing happened, So I think that it really is a matter of doing what you can, doing your best to be supportive. And the best way to be supportive, I think, is to also get educated about it. And to even just ask the person, say like, look, I don't know what to do. I don't understand this. I'll read up about it so I can understand better. But I'm here if you need, and you can just tell me what it is that you need or how I can help you. And I do think that it should be taken to the authorities, although the authorities may fail you too.
So how did you move on from these assaults that happened? Like, how do you move on? I could only imagine that there are triggers and things. Obviously, you said you wanted to sort of disappear, and that's why you went into all of these, like taking all of these drugs and everything. How did you like cope with having to like let that go by yourself? Because I can only imagine that would be very isolating for you not to be able to talk to anybody about.
I think that what really got me to get through it was the sobriety, because I was able to just face it. I think time plays a big factor as well, like temporal distance from the event. I think that that time really doesn't heal, but it helps when you can kind of distance yourself a bit from it. Also, my current partner, well, he's my husband. We got married recently. He helped me through a lot of it just by being a safe space for me. They're very supportive and being able to just process. I think a lot of it is just being able to process the pain. A lot of purge crying, working through, like peeling away an onion, and journaling, a lot of yoga, just reconnecting to myself and becoming a safe space for myself. I mean, I can tell you that today I have me. So I don't ever feel alone. I don't ever feel lonely. I count on myself and I depend on myself. And if I need a support, then I will find that support for myself. I've created a community for myself and a supportive, community for myself. I found someone who is also supportive. but I support myself too. So it's like, I think how I managed to get through those things and let go is a long process, but patience and allowing myself to feel, like allowing myself to grieve, allowing myself to feel the pain and just cry it out. And then a lot of gratitude for what I do have and for where I am today. Loads of different tools and practices, basically. Yoga, journaling, gratitude, crying, which is essentially emotional regulation as well, and support network. Mindset shifts, reframes, a lot being inspired by other people as well, that post-traumatic growth is possible.
It seems a lot of it is not only about sort of feeling of maybe neglect and being sort of deprived of love in a way, power as well, right? Like power being taken away from you, control in a sense. Is that something that affected you personally too, or would you say it was something entirely different that you had to deal with?
No, 100%. With the self-love, but the control as well is a big issue, and that's something that we see it come up in every aspect of our lives. When again, it's a survival mechanism. We try and control things to feel in control so that you feel safe. And especially when you've, as you said, you've been assaulted or abused, then that's been like taken away from you. So there definitely is an aspect of power to it. And I think it's a constant work in progress. I say that no one's ever fully healed, and I'm not fully healed. We're always healing. There's always more healing to be done. And even though I say I've mastered my mental health, it's because I'm very aware. I'm very self-aware. And I'm also very aware that I still have things that I like to be in control of or feel control over because of a safety thing, But at the end of the day, it does all boil down to, I believe, self-love and safety. Those are the main two things, I think.
Well, thanks a lot for sharing this part, which I can only imagine isn't anything easy or anything comparable to anything that comes out easily. Are you still in contact with your parents at all?
Yes. Oh, yes. Okay. So when I was putting myself through the post-trauma treatment programs, they actually, a family friend and my boyfriend at the time called them in Spain and said, if you don't come to Israel, you're going to lose your daughter, because I was that bad. So they ended up moving to Israel. And that was one of the bigger kind of healing moments for me as well, when I realized that they do love me. It was a very big step for them to it showed me that they care, and it was a healing moment, definitely. And since then we've just been working on our relationship, and today they are both my best friends.
That's great to hear.
Five and a half years ago. There were a few different things that led up to me finally getting sober, and I think it was the sobriety that was like the catalyst for everything, because I think the drinking had really, that kept holding me back, because it just really like numbs you, and it's like a fog, and it's just keeping you in this self-absorbed little miserable bubble, because drinking makes you feel like shit in the long run. In the short term, it's a great like comfort in the moment, and you feel great in the moment, but the next day you feel like shit. And I got to the point where I was passing out, like collapsing in my kitchen from a solo binge drinking session, and waking up in the mornings like relieved that I'm waking up, because it was just so bad that I was really scared I wasn't going to wake up one day. And that was not the future that I wanted for myself. And I think that the thing that got me to get sober was being scared of not changing something. Like like keeping stuck in the cycle that I was in was scarier than doing something about it.
So during that stage in your life, you actually came to realize how not okay you were. Was that during the time, like in
Well, yeah.
that stage itself?
Well, I mean, I realized I was not like I wasn't feeling okay the whole time. Like I existed at rock bottom for years, but I was so used to it as well that, you know, outwardly, like I would go out, I would, you know, go to parties, I'd go to clubs, I'd have relationships, I'd have, you know, everyone on the out, everyone thought that everything was fine. Not, I'm not, I don't think anyone really knew what was going on except for my partners. Like they would see, you know, they'd wake up in the morning and the bed would be drenched in my sweat because of my nightmares, you know. I'd have rage outbursts. So the people that were in the relationships with like my ex-boyfriends, my ex-husband, like they knew, they got to see some of what was going on with me, but nobody else did because I just knew how to put on a show. But then that was really, really exhausting. I was exhausted. And the alcohol was what like helped me kind of keep up this show outwardly. And I was drinking daily from more or less like on and off for more than a decade. So eventually I got to the point where I was like, I'd realized that I was really good at problem solving other than solving my own problems. Like I had a career in hospitality for a couple of years and I was really good at putting out fires and helping people and problem solving for the business itself, for the hotel itself. And so that was something that kind of planted a seed. I also realized that I really want to help people. I like helping people and I was actually really good at helping people. And so that was another seed that was planted. And so leading up to my sobriety about 6 years ago, I started really wanting to do something. I was like, I want to go back to study. I want to get a second degree. I want to get a master's, maybe in social work, maybe in psychology. And then my friend said, how can you help others if you can't help yourself? And so that was like the kick in the butt that I think kind of helped me. And I took up yoga, and yoga really helped me connect with myself and with my body. And I started to really want to respect myself, and I wanted to live, and I wanted to be healthy. And so, just one day, 28th of May, 2016, I woke up, it was a Saturday, and I'd had a bad dream, and I'd had too many drunk nights that week. And I just said, that's it, I'm done. And that was 5.5 years ago. It's like I woke up and I was like, oh my God, I've missed out on so much. I want to catch up on everything. I've always loved learning, but all my issues kind of got in the way of that. So suddenly I was like hungry for just knowledge and information, like what's going on in the world, how does the world work? Like I just came out of this bubble that had been my life, and then I realized that I want to help save the world because the world was going to shit. And I was like, I want to make a difference. I want to do something. I want to like do something about this. Like, oh my God, like it's just like this fire got lit up in me. And so I went and got a master's in organizational behavior and development to learn how to solve big problems. And I kind of view the world and society, our society, as one big organization. And every course and every class, I was always in the back of my mind, how can I apply this to society? Like I want to help reform society, educational reform, societal reform. And so that was kind of going on in the back of my mind the whole time I was studying. And then just as I submitted my thesis and graduated, 5 days after, actually, I gave birth. So I got thrown straight into motherhood, which was a whole other self-healing journey. I basically was looking for my purpose. And I realized that the underlying common denominator in all of my traumas and all of my past was a lack of self-love. I was never shown how to love myself. I never learned how to love myself. I always felt unloved, and so I was unworthy of love. And so how would I love myself, right? And I think many people struggle with that point as well. So I started a blog called Self-Lovism. I was able to actually reach people reaching out to me, telling me that I was helping them with just what I was writing and putting out there. Started an Instagram page, and then COVID hit, and I felt the universe like nudge me to try and help people, like properly help people. And I realized that as a consultant and a professional problem solver, what if I combine that and my formal training with my firsthand experience in self-healing. Like, I basically managed to master my mental health. I would struggle for years and years and years and years in hell, and I was finally happy and healthy, and my dreams were coming true. I fell in love, I became a mom, I got a degree, I was finding my path. I was like, everything, it was like I'd never been happy, and suddenly I was so happy, and I was like, I want to help other people do this. And I've been there, and everyone's always said that I'm like, I help them, so why don't I just try and put myself out there and do it, like, officially?
That's wonderful.
And that's how the self-healing consultant was born. Yeah.
So you said a lot of it started when you felt not seen enough by your parents, so in your childhood. So now that you're a mother yourself, what do you think you try to maybe put more effort into with your own kids, or what do you try to pay more attention to when it comes to raising your kids?
The best thing I can do, and the best way I can parent to be the best parent I can be, is to heal my wounds. At the end of the day, my parents weren't able to be there for me emotionally because their parents weren't there for them emotionally. And so it's a generational trauma. And so I've decided to be the cycle breaker. I'm the one that it stops with me. And so my kids are going to feel seen and heard and loved because I'm consciously and intentionally doing the work to heal the generational trauma so that I don't pass that on. So if, for example, my parents struggled with discomfort, I think a lot of it was discomfort. Big emotions are uncomfortable. And so I'm practicing daily to get comfortable with discomfort. I'm practicing daily to feel my own big emotions and to be okay with them and accept them, so that when my child has a big emotion, it doesn't freak me out. I don't get uncomfortable by it, and I don't try and get him to suppress it, or I don't ignore it and run away and leave him to kind of fend for himself with his big emotions. That's what I think is the best thing that any parent can do, is to self-heal, basically.
You studied to address the societal issues at large, right? Which is quite a big goal, I think. But congratulations on your graduation, even if a bit delayed. So what do you think are concerns that we should be putting more focus on as a whole society, or each individual person? What do you think are the most crucial things that need to happen?
Okay. So my conclusion is that practically every problem we have in the world, if it's racism or war or conflict or bigotry or poverty or crime, the underlying problem is trauma, more or less. Trauma, social conditioning, generational trauma. And I believe that the best way to help save the world, heal humanity, the things that we should focus on, like prioritize, is healing from trauma. So I'm actually working on a project that's called the Trapped project. Still working on it. Trauma recovery, awareness and prevention, which is basically just going to be free resources to help with trauma recovery, awareness and prevention. That's, I think, what we need to be focusing on. Educational reform is my first big goal that I will want to focus on. Right now I'm focusing on mental health because it's something I can do right now and make a difference now to like individuals. But my first bigger kind of collective goal is going to be educational reform, which has already started in some parts of the world. Finland has a great education program, but I do particularly want to focus on trauma education as well. So yeah, trauma.
I wouldn't have expected that answer, to be honest.
Yeah.
What What are your personal plans for the future?
Okay.
What do they look like?
So I'm working on a rebrand,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not finalized yet, but I think I will be calling myself, I'll be actually founding a company, the Big Idea Consulting Company, advocating and encouraging big ideas, because I think we have some really big problems and we need big ideas to solve them. And I have come up with a problem-solving model that I will be publicly sharing, and teaching people how to apply, and I'll be talking about it and giving workshops about it and trying to do as much as I can for free to kind of get it out there. I will be focusing as well on a program for mums, millennial mums on a mission with purpose-driven businesses, because I believe that women, they'll make more impact, I believe. So I'm all about encouraging women in business, purpose-driven businesses. And I will also have a program helping people find their purpose and launching purpose-driven businesses, because I'm all about more and more impact. I want to help people that want to help people.
Sounds great.
Yeah, and then I'm also going to have a program for teachers and parents. And as I said, the education thing about trauma, loads of different projects, loads and loads and loads of different things going on, but all around the same kind of idea of big ideas, problem solving, education, business. Yeah.
And you said you're currently working as a mental health coach as well, right?
Not a coach really. I'm a consultant, so I basically applied the organizational consulting model to the individual. So I help people analyze the symptoms, get to the root problem, which is generally trauma and social conditioning. And then we research the best practices out there that can help them, because everyone's different. So I kind of customize the sessions according to the unique needs of the client. And then I help implement the solutions if I am the best person to implement the solutions. Some people might want to try TRE or NFT or CBT, all these different practices that are out there. So I can also help them find the right person for them. So it's actually a consulting service. But yeah, basically it's what big companies with deep pockets get to solve their problems. So I'm bringing it to the individual and applying it to mental health.
Amazing.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. So I guess I'm gonna let you go. Thanks so much for sharing your story.
Thank you.
Which is very courageous to share that publicly.
Thank you, Nina.
Thank you. If you do feel like you need to talk to somebody or you need some kind of support, please check out your local national helpline, and we will also have some links on the show notes. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Upfront Podcast. We will be back next week.